Mr. Muller, thank you very much, particularly for those last words of wisdom. We are now properly engaged with the issue of citizenship and the South Asian diaspora in the age of globalization. The conversation has just started and will continue tomorrow. I would like you all to know that ISAS has a double function. We are a think tank. We work on very specific, precise policy issues, but we are also a research institute, and our hope is to be able to contribute to knowledge, in this particular case, to the knowledge of citizenship in the age of globalization. So the papers that have been presented, the questions that will be asked and discussed will all go towards that objective. Thank you very much in advance. The format of the panel is, I'm now allowed to ask one specific question to each member of the panel, and you'll take a few minutes to answer those. Then I'll take questions. I mean, a whole harvest of interesting questions have emerged. I'm only afraid we'll run out of time, but we will have a lot more time tomorrow, and I hope to see many of you there. So I'll turn first to Professor Devesh Kapoor. Devesh, a typical social scientific question. These Indians who are thriving in the United States, I mean, are they a self-selected sample who would have done well anyway, anywhere, or is there something about the United States which gives them a boost? I mean, one thinks about Hargobind Singh Khurana, who made it really good in the United States. So that's a first question. The connected question is, do they all think of themselves as the Indian diaspora, or do they identify themselves more with a region like Keralites or Telugus, or in terms of their religion? I mean, is that a homogeneous mass?
With regard to your first question, it is undoubtedly a very select group. And the data which I showed you sort of shows that they are way more educated than, say, people in India in general. The question is, would they have done as well anywhere? There, I think the answer is no. I think there was a particular, or there is a particular type of openness of the United States to merit in way many other societies are trying. So some are there, some have still a ways to go. So I think both factors have contributed to the degree of their success. In terms of how they identify themselves, there's a series of surveys on Asian Americans. So the 6 largest Asian American groups in the United States are people from China, Vietnam, Philippines, Korea, Japan, and India. So they have done a series of surveys in the past to see their self-identification as, say, Vietnamese Americans or Asian Americans or just Americans. And you find that with the Indians, very few identify themselves as South Asians. They identify themselves as Indian American or American. That's the largest. We don't have specific data on the subnational identity, identification, because that was not asked in this survey. So we don't really have very firm, at least systematic information sort of on that.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Didar Singh, as I was listening to you, I got the feeling that there's a liberal paradigm which underpins your work, a liberal paradigm which assumes that free movement of labor and capital benefits everyone, that in the end it's a better world because there is migration, because people are free to find the highest level of compensation for their talents. Is that optimistic scenario also not coterminous with an expanding international global economy? If that starts contracting, particularly in the powerful West, like the Brexit factor and the Trump candidacy, do you think that liberal paradigm will survive? And the annex to that question is not only the shrinking of the economy, but also terrorism and the rise of Islamophobia. How are they going to affect the scenario that you have sketched?
Very interesting, Professor. You've really hit the nail on the head. I don't know whether everybody here is aware that actually border controls, or what we call immigration as we know it today, actually comes only after the First World War. It didn't exist before that. You could move anywhere in the world. So migration was a natural phenomena, and mobility, the movement of people, was a natural phenomenon that the world has known for 2,000 years. It's only now with the formation of the nation state, and this links to your citizenship issue, that this formation of the nation state, where even those countries which came formed from migrants, whether it is the US or whether it is parts of Europe or even the UK, which has a large number of migrants, even they, and particularly Europe, this is said about, that it's okay as long as I'm inside. I'm Fortress Europe after I've come inside.
Yeah.
So I want to stop everybody else now. Yeah. I'm already there and I want to learn the benefit of it. So you're absolutely right. This issue of stopping mobility is actually an issue which is going to harm globalization. In fact, Brexit in many ways represents a decline of globalization.
Yeah.
And in that context, I think the final solution to it actually lies, or the danger that actually lies, is that economies which do this, which restrict mobility, are ultimately going to harm themselves and are going to decline as economies themselves. So that is really the answer. You have to have, for capitalism, and democracy is another word for capitalism, we basically need mobility of capital, goods, services, and people. If you stop one of those four, you will have trouble in your economy, and that answers your question. The security angle of it, of course, is there. It is something which will always be there, but that is something for nation states to take a view on, and for the global world to take a view on in whatever way they can. But that doesn't mean that you stop the mobility, because for business, unless there is mobility, there is no competitiveness.
Yeah.
So without that, you're going to lose yourself in your competitiveness, and therefore as an economy.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Mullah, this is an opportunity for me to thank the government of India for a very particular personal reason. When I took a foreign citizenship, it was very painful to go to the embassy and hand over the passport, and to have to knock at one's door to be allowed to come in, because one had to then go back for a visa. Today, one can have it both this way and that way. That, I think, is a wonderful development. My question to you is, I was very encouraged when I saw how hard India was trying to help out people who are stuck in travel spots of the world, like in the Middle East. And not just Indians, India was also helping out others. Now, in this conference, we're talking about the South Asian diaspora. What do you think, personally? Of course, this is, you cannot answer for the government of India, but you have thought about these issues. Should every South Asian country have a consulate in every major immigration parts of the world? Or isn't there a scope for cooperation, a kind of SADC kind of cooperation, so that South Asian countries help each other's nationals out on foreign soil? First of all, is anything like this is happening? And if not, do you think that would be something to take away from the diaspora back home?
Again, I think, again, a very simple but very complex question. What I would say is the engagement with our neighbors is much more now than it has been in the past. And to that extent, our Prime Minister needs to be, given the credit, because on the first day of his taking office, he actually had all the heads of state in Delhi and showing except for Maldives now, he has visited all the countries. So what happens is, typically in the neighborhood, you have a very different kind of engagement as compared to countries that are not so close. What is important in my view is the kind of camaraderie that we show here, can we not display it when we engage with each other politically? That's what. But maybe we are moving in that direction. And like I was in Maldives, the government of Maldives requested me that, oh, there is this upheaval in Egypt, and our 52 of our people are there in Egypt. Can you please help us? I sent a message to my joint secretary, the director general, looking after Maldives, and he said, yes, why not? Let them contact our mission in Egypt. And they were evacuated. They were brought not only to Delhi, they were brought from Delhi to Bangalore, and they were flown by Air India from Bangalore to Male. So it's perhaps not highlighted, but we have to see how really imaginative we are in future, because in a way the globalization, the use of technology, they offer us new opportunities, and we should make best use of it.
Thank you very much. The question to Dr. Modi actually has come from the floor. I mean, you are a shining example of diasporic success. The question that's coming is, can there be a new Modi of this generation? On what basis do you determine that a startup firm can benefit from globalization with the current competition and respective market situation?
No, I think in business, in startup, you can do startup anywhere. And I find while I'm in Singapore, Singapore especially is a rightful place to do startups. Not only for Singapore, you can ride on the Singapore brand. Singapore is a country which is, as I said, recognized world over. And anything which is made in Singapore or branded in Singapore is in a way accepted as a quality product. And as such, it has a preference over a Chinese or even Indian and other products, because Singapore is seen as a global market. The customer here are very choosy in terms of what they have choices. And as such, Singapore is a very right place to do a startup. And that's why Singapore is becoming a regional hub for a lot of companies from India, from other parts of South Asia, as well as China. And Singapore is a place where people are working on this. And I think this is also true in US. If you have a startup in US, it has a different meaning, and a lot of companies have done startup in US and then brought those products in their own country. So I think business-wise, countries which have reputation of being smart nations or people who are involved in creating quality as the basis of consumerism, those nations' products or their technologies are well accepted worldwide. So I think Singapore is in line with US in terms of that, and more and more companies I find are using Singapore as a base for startup and regional cooperation.
Thank you very much. We have just enough time for one question, which has got 60 votes. Obviously, it's one of the most pressing questions. I'm going to ask this question, and I'll invite all three of the panelists to take a position on it. Brain drain or brain trade? And that's the question. Approximately 60,000 sort of bright Indian students have left India in the past 10 years. I think the statistics are wrong. It's a lot more. And India loses a lot of bright students to other countries such as the United States, UK, Canada, and Singapore because of reservation policies back home. So there are two angles to it. First of all, is it a blanket brand trade? Second, is this being caused because these bright people could have made it back home too, but reservation policies restrict the domestic job market and employment opportunities for them? So these are two entangled questions. Since we are running out of time, a quick answer from you, then from you, Devesh, and Mr. Mollai.
Okay, first of all, this reservation policy business is a completely spurious argument, because reservation policy applies only to government jobs. Government jobs are not even 5% of what is on offer in India. Everything else is private sector, and private sector has no reservation policy about it. So it's completely wrong question. In terms of brain drain, India has never said we had brain drain. In fact, we've always said we've had brain gain. Mr. Modi contributes even now to India, so it's an ongoing issue. We have no issue with this at all.
Okay, thank you. Devesh?
I do think that the reservation issue is a red herring, like for this. But I do think that India does lose a lot of talent, but that has to do with the state of its higher education sector at large. India has done a poor job in maintaining the quality of its higher education institutions, and so it does a poor job in attracting people as faculty back to further to develop these institutions. That is a core, much more important issue, which reservations is a very small part of it. That's not the real issue.
Okay. Mr. Mulay?
I think reservation has been a very important instrument in empowerment and addressing the issue of social inequality, which was, absolutely embedded in the Indian traditional hierarchical caste system. And if you see today, India has maintained its diversity. And also at the same time, you have this year's civil services, the topper. Civil services in India is supposed to be the most difficult examination in the world now. The topper has been a person from the so-called scheduled caste. This is a tribute to the reservation policy and how over a period of time, everybody given an opportunity can come up to the national or international standards.
Okay. Thank you very much. It has been a wonderful start to our long conversation that will follow tomorrow on citizenship and diaspora in the age of globalization. Thank you very much. We have had a lot more questions which we have not been able to take up, but those questions are not lost. We'll keep thinking about them as we proceed with our conversations tomorrow. Audience, please join me to thank our speakers for a wonderful session.
Thank you, speakers. I'd like to ask Dr. Modi to kindly hand out the tokens of appreciation. To Dr. Kapoor first. To Dr. Singh. Mr. Mulay. And to Professor Mitra. Thank you, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll now break for lunch, and please be back in your seats by 1:55 p.m. so we can start the afternoon session promptly at 2. Thank you. Enjoy lunch.